I've been working here in this spot for about 16, 17 years now. I was always kind of working in a capacity where, I was drawing upon my playing ability as a musician and writing ability and programming and all that sort of thing, even as I was working up my engineering and production craft. So those five things I've always kind of been kind of a concoction of all those five things together in everything I've done since too. Since people have asked me to produce for them or to do their projects for them. It's always been me implementing, my full skill set. Those who hire professionals to work in sessions, they're definitely hoping that they'll be finding somebody who can do more than just one thing. It's a far cry from when I first got into it, where you would have a really great engineer and you'd have a really really solid, confident producer, and then great musicians, and that still happens. That's session dynamic still exists, and it's great. I mean, that was the beginning of my career. All that sort of dynamic was what I did day in, day out. I think most professionals, myself included, I think that a lot of people are still navigating and figuring out how to best execute it, to best facilitate that expectation. I think being a child of the '80s, probably some of the things that started transpiring in that decade, which I think a lot of us take for granted now because we just accepted of the music of that decade, but a lot of bands came along where they were really fusing things, and it hadn't happened before. So like when bands like The Clash or The Police came along, what you ended up having was like a collision of worlds. I mean, The Clash were like, punk and reggae and probably some soul and R&B as well. Whereas The Police were the same, but they were doing it in different ways. So I think the music of my generation is what kickstarted that for me. And I was like probably the only kid in the neighborhood who, apart from a lot of my friends, didn't think that disco sucked when everybody was saying disco sucked. I was still like, what's wrong with it? I love it. Once I got my first computer and started getting into programming and discovering MIDI and different things, I started discovering Club World and everything that came from that, and all the things that you could do, and understanding that, that you can manipulate drum machines in a way and play things that drummers might not instinctively play, which of course we're in an interesting world now where, drummers do think like drum machines now. You know what I mean? We've crossed the line where drummers of today kind of blend both classical pop, jazz, R&B, rock drumming thinking with like all the things we've come to accept of the last 40, 45 years of, the drum machine implementation and infusion into the culture. In another band of my time growing up, Talking Heads. I mean, when I first heard Remain in Light by Talking Heads, I was completely blown away by that. Well, I didn't understand at the time that what I was hearing was a band that were so influenced by West African music that that's essentially what they were playing. But it took a band like that to suck me into a world of discovery of that. So getting into really emphasizing drums on a musical level, combined with somebody who decided that he wanted to become an engineer. Well, every engineer likes drum sounds, right? Every engineer that you find in the studio, they're always priding themselves on whether you got a great drum kit sound, or even just a great snare sound, as ludicrous as that is. Everybody wants to be great at that because I think it's the one bit of engineering craft which is a really specific, requires a specific development and craft. Not that recording guitars or vocals do not, because they do as well. It's a completely different thing. You're also dealing with, in drum recording, you're dealing with the necessity of, the more mics you use, for example, the more you have to be responsible about phase relationships, and it's very easy to just put microphones in front of a drum kit and say you're a drum engineer now. Of course, it doesn't work that way, does it?